So Mark, I realized that at least one of your top 10 records is one of my top 10 records too.
Okay, hit me.
Can you guess which one that is?
Well, is it the Dude I See Over Your Shoulder? That would be my first guess. Love Supreme.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Correcto mundo. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Are you, Mark, physically? Are you in New York? Are you upstate? Or are you in?
I'm in LA as of a couple years ago.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. Hey, what area are you in?
Just north of downtown. It's called Atwater Village, near Silver Lake or
Near Silver Lake. Okay, I just wonder. Okay, yeah.
How do you like it?
It's great. Like I said, the New York LA move it feels kind of trendy, but the reason, like Mike, I was saying, my wife is born and raised from LA. So the fact that it was like a family move, she wanted to go home, it made it really easy. It didn't feel like this career thing where we had to weigh pros and cons and this and that. So it feels natural.
And it feels good out there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And to be stuck at home for a year, it's not the worst place,
Yeah. I got to tell you, Mark, I'm just like, your wife's album is like in my top 3 at the moment.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I mean, my wife and I listen to it constantly now. It's just like we have it going over Alexa and this and that. And
cool.
It's just beautiful. It's so natural. It's so innocent. It's so pure. And it's that old school, like Brazil, like 60s,
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing fancy about it. It's just good, vulnerable, and she's so close to the mic, and it's just, everything is great. Really nice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very kind.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, and somehow she convinced Airto to jump on a track. So that was, it was remote, but it's special to have that extra little mojo on the record,
Yeah, I love what she did on top of his thing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very nice. And
I'm sure this past year we've all had the experience where you're doing stuff remote, which isn't really ideal, but you're like expecting a file to show up any day now, and then it's Airto. You're not gonna really nitpick and say, "Can you maybe change?" It's whatever shows up, and that email is gonna be the thing. So you certainly assume it's gonna be magic, but it arrives and you open it and you're like, "Oh my gosh, it's a really a special feeling,"
Yeah. Where is Airto now? Where is he?
I don't know what city. He's in Brazil. I forget which city he's in, but yeah.
We're in Santa Barbara for the longest time.
Okay.
And
yeah, it was.
I watched a lot of your stuff the last couple of days, and I've seen you live with Lenny when the book first came out at the thing down. Yeah.
You guys scared the shit out of me sitting right in the front. Man, that was cruel. That was cruel. I have such a vivid memory of exactly where you were. It was like the first table. I was like, this is unfair. This is unfair. Anyway.
We double teamed your ass.
We enjoyed it. We enjoyed it, Mark. We enjoyed it.
Yeah, we were digging it. It's like, go ahead, show us what's yeah. No, but what I was going to ask, when you really start, I notice whether you're in a solo, whether you're playing time, whether you're playing, doesn't matter the genre or the kind of time you're playing, the kind of grooves, because you can play all kinds of grooves. I can see that. But are you at the point where you just can put a whole gang of them together and just you come out where when you're right? How I don't know if you know what's going to happen till you get there, but when you do get there, you're right. So in other words, are you using your knowledge of 4 times 7 wouldn't equal bang, or is this just now become natural, or was it always natural? How did this happen that you developed it to this degree?
Good question.
Mike, do you mean, are you still counting?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, that's what I mean. You know,
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm really spoiled by the musical situations I'm in, and they kind of allow, a lot of them allow for an anything goes spirit. So the first thing is like to be encouraged by the music and by the other musicians to just go for stuff like that, because that way I don't need to truly know in advance where it'll end up, because even if it doesn't land there, there's no negative consequences. It's more about that the disposition of just being willing to go for stuff, more so than it landing in like the best way or the right way. So I think a lot of those choices come from the kind of collective spirit that's built, that gives us, we're kind of egging each other on the whole time,
Right.
And where it lands is almost an afterthought, more so like, hey, go for the thing you're hearing, we'll catch you if you fall, kind of thing. So that's more like the intention behind it. And then when I was younger, I definitely relied a little more on math, but only in the practicing, just to like figure out where stuff may land. But it always felt like more of a distraction than not in a musical situation. I didn't want to be thinking about that stuff. And also I thought I didn't always love the sound of, I didn't want to have to play enough of a thing to land in a particular place. Like I thought, as you guys, it feels so silly this is how I felt at the book. I was like, Joe is interviewing me. He's like, so what do you think about this? I'm like, give them a mic. Anyway, so it's like, I don't always like, I might love the sound of 3 against a thing, 5 against a thing, whatever it might be, but I don't necessarily want to have to play all of them to come back around on a downbeat or something, because then the sound becomes more obvious than you intended. Like if the intention is to create some tension and shake things up, the longer you play something, the tension starts to dissipate, right? So I want to be able to get out of there quick, or I want to be able to get in a funny place, get out in a funny place to create that kind of tension. So when I was younger and I was relying on the math, I was kind of backing myself into a corner of like, okay, now I can do this thing, but it has to start on beat 2 and it'll get me to beat 1. So it wasn't malleable at all. So I tried to loosen up a bit and see if I could just jump in and out at different times.
It sounds like you've created your own paradigm. You guys, you and your musicians have created your own paradigm. You play what you play when you play it, and they urge you on, you urge them on, and it falls the way it falls. And that's what I was hearing when I listened to your band play at the Blue Note in Milano. Okay. And I wasn't even thinking about counting the time signatures. Mm-hmm. That was just because it was, and you do your piano play, he just played, and it was falling wherever it was falling. Mm-hmm. And that was really great.
Cool.
They should have had the camera on him a little bit more.
Right.
Mark, I could relate, because your first response to Mike's question was my exact experience. And it was that same, coming from Sly, there wasn't really any of that in the sense of, time signatures and odd times and stuff. You're playing grooves, it's funk. And but Weather Report, it was that your first response was just, I could relate totally.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, a lot of people don't know that Greg played with the Weather Report.
I read that today. I was trying to do some homework.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think the first time I became aware of you maybe was on the Dave Douglas record, High Risk.
Cool.
Yeah, he always finds really invigorating musicians, the environment is so cool that he creates, I think. And it must have been must have been great for you to find an outlet like that, because you were doing electronics as well as acoustic, and yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I'm sure you guys have felt this when I've been lucky where sometimes you're a side person, but the leader is trying something different and they kind of venture onto your turf a little bit.
Yeah.
So although it's not your thing, you feel at home. So like Dave, like you said, Dave has a very wide broad output, but he lives, I would say, more so in an acoustic realm.
Yeah.
So when he was going for more of this electronic thing, he kind of, came to us a little bit. It wasn't the real like leader side man. You just kind of jump in and play the gig. So it was very, very nice. It felt really collaborative.
Yeah.
Mark, I was listening to some of the electronic stuff that you did the other day, and some of the speeds and the intricacies of the figures were very intricate, and the speeds were breakneck. So I was going to ask you, are you performing that stuff, or are you creating it with MIDI and typing it in,
Programming it?
Yeah. Everything's played. I mean, it's usually inspired by a more programmed thing,
But
it
was just like, wow.
Yeah. I got lucky.
Just
got lucky.
really, and very accurate. It was very cool.
So I was like lucky enough to meet you. We did that China Drum Summit in
Exactly.
Beijing, and you were there with Chris Moore, your buddy Chris, bass player, just a duo. And I got a chance to really check you out,
Totally.
up close, and then we would hang out and say stupid shit to each other, that kind of stuff. It was fun. But I'm really into like teaching and books and all this stuff. I love just that whole thing. And so I just happened to have your book here, which you were so kind enough to give me an autograph.
Well,
which is cool. So the book is pretty stunning, man. I mean, conceptually, it's really interesting. So you have your drop concept, which is what? Dynamics, rate, orchestration, and phrasing. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I called your teacher, Joe Bergamini, to get some dirt on you. So, we talked for quite a while, and he was telling me about kind of, this, you working with him and that kind of thing. And so he was saying that you didn't really want to do a book, but here you have this one that's very creative. The presentation of it is really creative. The material in it is super creative. Explain to me and us the drop concept. How did you come up with that? I mean, it's brilliant.
Thank you. Can I just go back to the China Drum Summit for 1 second? I don't think you meant to give me a compliment, but you paid me the highest compliment I've maybe ever received when we're hanging out in the hotel lobby after the performance. And Chris and I were playing, it was pretty abstract what we were playing. And we're just hanging out, and then out of the blue you go, "What the are you thinking about when you play?" And I took that as a very high compliment.
Well, it was a beautiful performance, man, because I remember after it was done, we're all kind of in the green room there hanging out. You had, what impressed me, I think, even as much as you're playing, was that you had given yourself completely to the performance. And it was very evident that you had completely absorbed yourself and dove into this thing. So it looked like you were kind of decompressing after it was over, and it was just so refreshing to see you give yourself so completely to a performance. It was just cool,
Cool. Right on. Thank you. And so for the book, I kind of have, when I was studying with Joe, we were in all the important books and going through that. So I have like that repertoire, and that those classic, you know, books hold a very special place in my heart. And it was like, I always thought it would be fun to try to contribute to the library of drum books. But as I got a little older, that's when like the DVD boom was happening. Like there was a period of time where you wouldn't think to do a book, you do a DVD, right? Like late 90s into 2000s or so. And that always intimidated me because I thought, like, I guess just the idea of really putting your name on a thing. And then it's like, all right, you're that guy. And I was like, I don't even know who I am. So how could I so confidently present one thing? Because I realized, like, the books that try to do a lot of different things don't always land. They could be interesting, but you know, you want to try to find kind of a narrow thing and really deliver it. So I always had such a wide variety of interests that there wasn't one thing that stood out. And because of my relationship with Joe, it was on my mind because he was really getting involved with all the Hudson Music stuff. And I actually did a clinic at PASIC, and you know, I had done a couple clinics throughout the years, but it was a little more off the cuff. And I thought, for that one, let me try to like shape this and figure out what I'm going to do. And Joe was there, and after the clinic, after the presentation, he's like, all right, there's the book. You know? So I was like, okay. And it had these natural kind of chapters to it, and it led itself to some structure. But even then, you know, for me, I feel like I'm never done with anything. And there's something that a book implies, that here's exercise 1 on page 6. You go to your drum lesson and you play it, and then you say, all right, let's turn the page. And there's an implication that you're done with that one, on to the next. And for me, it was like, no, but this could be a year. Let's see, what can we get out of this? So I was trying to figure out a way to communicate that. I mean, my joke to Rob Wallace at Hudson was that my real idea was to try to explain the concept just with text, and however long that would take, and really communicate the thing, because hopefully it's a way to help people formulate their own ideas. You know, it's not about my ideas. It's like, how can we just build stuff and learn more about ourselves? So the idea for the book was a bunch of text talking about that, and then just 60 pages of blank manuscript paper. But that's not a really good business plan. You know, can't really sell that. But that's really what the intention is. Like, hey, try this. What if you did this? Have you thought about this? All right, go. Get out of here. Like, don't worry about my suggestions. They're of no more or less value than the things you'll find. It's more about asking these questions and trying to really resist the temptation to always move on to the next thing, and really stay home with more these like core fundamental things, and just go in and in and in. Because when I was younger, I didn't have any of my own ideas. I needed a book to tell me what to play, or I needed you guys on a record to tell me what to play, you know? And then I started playing with other people and improvising, and I was like, whoa, like no one's here. I don't have Lenny over my shoulder whispering the next phrase to play, you know? So it's like, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to start to generate my own ideas. And it became less about working on really specific things, or like less about accumulating individual ideas, and more about just taking 1, 2, 3 ideas, and how can I get the most out of these, and to the point of being seemingly limitless, you know?
Rick, you created a concept. You created a...
No, I didn't. I'm just...
Yeah, you did, man.
You did. You create that. That's what creating a concept does. You grab here, and then you say, okay, let me smash this. Wow, that sounds really interesting. Mm-hmm. Execution validates the concept. If you couldn't execute it, then you wouldn't have a concept. But the fact is that you thought of these ideas, and you can play them, you can demonstrate and show them. So that validates a concept. So that's what you did. You created a concept.
I would love to hear your perspectives on this, but I've been trying to think of if you were to analyze any single beat, not even a drum beat, like a beat of one pulse in music at the drum set, to me, the way I think about what's happening, whether you hear it or whether it's written down, if you could like freeze it in time, the first thing I think about is first, what is the pulse? So how much space do we have between these two beats? And then the next choice is what rate is being used? Is it triplets? Is it eighth notes, sixteenths? And then what notes of that rate is it built from? Because just because you're thinking about sixteenths doesn't mean you have to play all of them, you know? And then finally, where do you want to hear it? Where on the instrument? And that includes, you know, of course, the orchestration, but the dynamics and the spirit and all those things. But that's like the order that I think about stuff. So I think about all of the notes of the rate first, and then it's like you just choose the ones that you wish to present. You know, I know it sounds like hyper analytical, but that's why, like, it's basically a way to learn how to start using space. You know, so those partials, I think about them more as like, it's less about one E and it's more about the anda that you're now choosing not to play. You know,
Space between the notes.
yeah, totally. So and to have access to all of those possibilities of equal value, you know, because it's like, yeah, you're going to lean on the ones that feel better, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just want more of them to feel better.
That's a concept.
For more of them, you know.
That's a concept.
Yeah, man.
I was telling the guys the other day, like when I first heard Chris Dave, right? And it was like the way the notes he was choosing not to play and what he was choosing to play, it really messed me up.
Mm-hmm.
It really like shook me to my foundation, you know? It's like, oh my God, you know, this is a shift in the fabric here. And I see you mess with that same type of thing, and you know other people as well. That's really that seems so kind of revolutionary to me. Like the you know, the notes that were being left out were new. You know, the places where the silence was new or unfamiliar to me at least.
That's cool. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in that way. I mean, space and silence is like, it's trippy because it allows, yeah, I don't want to, it allows for the listener to have their own experience, right?
Yeah.
If you fill up all the space, there's no mystery. You're just providing all the information. So there's no room very little room for interpretation, you know.
So Mark, that's what the issue is today with most drummers. That's what they do all the time, is fill up the space.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that you get their perspective and you don't give the audience an alternate perspective. When you don't play and you approach a solo or whatever with that space, they don't know what to do. The audience doesn't know what to do because they're used to going that's what they're used to hearing.
Yeah.
So when you don't play that, wait, whoa, what's going on here? You know?
Yeah.
So that the use of space is brilliant. That's exactly like Mike said. It's a different concept. It's something that is not normal. You know?
And it really allows, if you let the listener inject their own imagination, then you're bound to end up with all these different interpretations, which to me, the most exciting art is the stuff that we look at a painting and we have 6 pretty different ideas about what it is. That's heavy, you know? You know, but if it's like, to use the visual example, if it's someone painted an apple and it's like, it looks like a photograph, like it's amazing that the technical achievement is stunning.
Yeah.
You could do that, and it's glistening and all these things, but it's an apple, you know? So it's not to diminish that, but if for some reason someone made something and in their mind they're painting an apple, but it leaves this ambiguity where it's maybe a little misshapen and it's not red, it's a different color, and there's some
now
other
you're talking
stuff
like
going on.
Picasso.
Yeah, and even more subtle, it could just be, it allows room for us to say, oh, I wonder.
Did he really mean that? Did he really mean that?
And especially if he didn't title the painting, you know, My Apple, you know, then, you know, it could just be whatever, you know, more ambiguous. And that's why, you know, I love lyrics. I love songs with words, but, you know, one of the real intriguing things about instrumental music is the lack of a real specific narrative through the lyrics that might help you have a different interpretation.
I think great songs too, lyrical songs, are the ones that inspire interpretation across a broad spectrum. You know, like there's a lot of different people. It means something different to this person, that person, that person. That's a great song.
What were the books coming up that you considered classics, you know, for you?
Yeah. Well, already I was thinking about the rate chapter of my book the phrasing chapter is essentially a ripoff of Future Sounds, you know, that's no question.
That's funny.
But no, just the idea of, hey, take a thing. See, Dave, when I was working on that, my younger self, as I moved a groove a 16th note ahead or something, I couldn't still think about it in its original form. I just had to like go in and say, okay, here's a different beat, you know, and then that's how I got through the page. But now, you know, the goal certainly is to try to always hear it as that beat, and you just have the ability to move it around, you know, so that for me was a bit of an evolution. But yeah, with Joe, it was a lot of hand stuff and, you know, the very rudimental and the Nard solos and things like that. And then we got to the kit. For jazz, it was, you know, the John Riley books were super helpful. The Chapin book for Independence.
Yeah.
There's the Chafee book that I really like was the Rhythm and Meter one. That one helped me out a lot.
Oh, yeah. Very good stuff.
Yeah. And long list. And it was, like I said, I needed every ounce of it. I had the drive, but I didn't have any of my own stuff to work with. So I was hungry, you know.
You do now.
Yeah, trying.
What about your setup? Because you like have this real minimalist kind of approach with your, you know, like you make a lot of music with a small amount of gear, you know, like when we did that thing in China, you had a really kind of weird kind of small setup, you know, very minimalist, but it was an incredible amount of music and art that was coming from it. You know, explain that, you know, like your idea of that, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was I started out with the bigger kit and had a lot of fun. And when I got into jazz, I just thought like, okay, it's got to sell the double pedal, got to like really do the whole thing. I'm just Max Roach. That's it. Just trying to be Max Roach, you know. And I went to school for jazz. And so that brought me to the, you know, 4-piece and a couple cymbals. And then when I was in New York during school, I was checking out a lot of the avant-garde scene, and that inspired me to like ornament the drums in a lot of different ways of, you put this on the snare drum, you hang this from a cymbal, you could, you know, guys like Jim Black and Joey Barron and Jeff Ballard, and these are the guys I was like really checking out, and it was very curious and inventive, and it was really like anything goes. And so I really like the idea of oh, I could just bring my cymbal bag to the gig, but if I throw 5 or 6 of these little more ornamental things, yeah, I'm going to go play the house kit, but I can transform that sound pretty easily with these different things, you know? And that helped me stay in a more minimal place, but try to get the most out of what was there. And I also found I just found whatever was in front of me, I was going to hit it, whether it was right for the music or not. So as I started to remove things, I would, like, as an exercise, I would be like, what if I always thought that, like, the real estate of where the rack tom lives is so valuable.
Yeah.
You know, it's just so nice. It's just right there. And sometimes sometimes that didn't feel like it warranted that property. You know, it's like, I want something else from that. I want to reach there because it's so comfortable, but get something else. So when I removed the rack tom for certain music, at least the more electronic stuff, I realized I didn't totally miss it. And that's when it allowed to put a stack or another little hi-hat there. And it was just very convenient. But yeah, I also thought, like, I went through phases where I was trying to figure out who I was and be unique and things like that, which can quite often be a pretty distracting journey, you know. Ironically, often takes you away from yourself more than not. But like, oh, let me go to Home Depot and buy this weird piece of metal and cut a hole and put it on a stand. And this is my whatever. And then by the time you get home, you're unique. You're the guy with that setup, but like, there's no depth to that, you know? So I thought, you know, what if I take the path most traveled, actually, instead of the path least traveled, take the path most traveled and try to set up like Max Roach. And if you can try to find an inkling of yourself in that kind of world, then that felt more productive and more like a deeper way of discovering those things.
What I notice now about some of your videos, and I love this, is that it sounds like you're really going to play a groove, but how light can I play and make this thing groove? I love that. That's what I'm trying to work on that myself, as I find I can't hit the drum so hard as I used to, you know? And so you want to make it really beautiful, but light, you know? And it seems like you're doing that a lot lately in your videos.
Yeah, I've been trying to, that's also a product of the situations I've been in where they just demanded me to play quiet, but with great detail. You know, I used to, playing quiet so hard, you know, it's so really challenging. And I think we all have our own definition of quiet. So it's hard. It's actually quite hard to practice it. I thought I was practicing it, and then I would get in quiet situations and it wasn't actually quiet, but I was practicing, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I've been right out of college. I was playing with this guy, Avishai Cohen, in a piano trio, and it was a lot of rhythmic detail, but really quiet. So I had to, as you guys know, of course, I always had like the idea of volume and intensity were connected. So as things got quieter, I didn't have the ability to unhook them. So the intensity would dip too, you know? So it was over time to try to learn how to unhook those and not let the intensity dip if the dynamics dipped, you know? And that just came from being on stage with other musicians there and trying to hang with the intensity as we would move around, you know? So it's kind of like separating the physical presentation from the energy and the spirit of it.
So there's a really cool recording that you did with that Lionel Lueke, you know, the guitarist, right? And I think the song is called, I think it's called Tribal Dance, I think it is. And it's like a 12/8, you know, kind of vibe. And at the end, you solo at the end where there's like a vamp that's happening. They're playing chords, a chordal thing that's happening behind you. And what it sounds like when you talk about intensity, it just made me think of that, because it sounds like you start here and it just keeps kind of going and going. And it's like you're turning a little switch. I don't know how to describe it, man, but it's like you just kept going and going and going and going and going, and it just got more dense and wider in concept. All the sounds that you were bringing in, but you kept this same rate going all the way through this. It was really, I almost had to pull. I heard on XM radio, and I actually pulled off the road so that I could take a picture of the screen so I wouldn't be able to come and check it out at home. It was really, really a fabulous thing. So you talk about intensity. I'm thinking kind of like it reminded me of that, that thing, you know.
Can I flip it to you guys for a second? Because something I've been thinking about a lot lately, which all of you do masterfully, is now I'm on the other side of that, and it's kind of like, yeah, I know how to build and I know how to let something come down in musical ways, but sometimes deceptively, the most difficult thing ends up being the maintenance of a particular energy, you know, and not in a passive way. I think it's easy to passively keep something where it is, but how do you really actively keep something alive without having to change, without having to add notes or add an obvious intensity? I think that is like some of the highest level shit there can be.
Wouldn't that somehow fall under the heading possibly of focus? Because if there's no distractions, you're in the bucket as deep as you could get, and everybody's right there, and it's staying right there. And I think I think in my brain, when I'm super focused, I can do that, and it's not a problem. If I'm not super focused, then like you say, I can passively stay there and it'll seem like I'm there, but I'm emotionally not there. I'm either wishing I was there or wishing I was doing something else or whatever the hell happens. But when I get a tight, like Muhammad Ali, when he fought the first 6 rounds of Joe Frazier, he said, man, I had that tight focus. Joe couldn't do nothing with me. But then he lost it and he started getting tagged with overhand rights, you know, and left hooks. And he talked about that in his book. And then later on, he started to. So when I'm playing, if I can maintain that, if I think about this a lot, that sharp focus, then I can do those things that you're addressing my way and at the level that I do them. But I really understand what you meant. I don't know if my answer is correct, but I heard what you just said. I got it, bro.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that's probably right, Mike. You know, I think we did a recording with Tower. We kind of like get in that space a lot where it's, you know, you just kind of focus on an energy that you sustain throughout a set, you know. And we did a live recording we did called Live in a Living Color. And we recorded all kind of stuff for that. But what came out on the album was one side of songs, and the second side was one song. And it was a song that we did for, I think it was 25 minutes long, something like that. And it was a live thing. And I listened to it years later and thinking, man, it stayed right in the thing, you know, from start to finish, not a drop in concentration, anything. I mean, it seems like it's that focus thing that you're discussing here, you know?
I was just going to say Jabbo was a master of that.
Yeah, sure. There wasn't a fill within 150 miles of the groove.
Yes.
It was just, you know, this thing that he would just nail and nail and nail, and the band is killing it, you know?
But Mark was referring to, when he mentioned it early on, referring to how do you maintain that intensity without necessarily being intense? It might be space between the notes, or more of an emotional thing of once you get it there.
How do you maintain?
Take your foot, but take your foot off the gas. Don't choke it. You're there. Now it doesn't need it's downhill, baby. It's rolling. It's a freight train. You ain't stopping that unless you stop it. It's like,
it's very interesting because I get there, but how I get there is the opposite of what you guys talked about. And it's closer to what Mark does with his band. See, what happens is once you establish where it is, then it's so tight that you mess with and shift the pocket. Pocket is there. You maintain the pocket, but you shift it. And I heard Mark's band do that. And it's an art to keeping the groove. And sometimes what you have to do is you have to rest on everybody else's emotion too. So you don't always create the emotion. You're not always doing this all the time. Everybody gives it. You create it to the point where it's like paragliding. You create it and it goes like this, and it's so moving like this. And then one guy goes and does that, and you say, oh, so you go do that too, and you grasp from his energy. So what happens is that the energy is synergy. It comes from everybody. It's not just from you. And you rest on that. And I mean, it could take you forever. And that's the whole thing. That's about playing pulse. And Mark, I listen to your band and I see you do that. So it's like when you ask the question, you're already doing that. And how you do that is you're playing off of everybody's energy. It's like a thing. You create an energy and everybody chimes into that energy, and then you're playing off of each other. It's like you can play a pocket, and the pocket is so killer that like when you guys talked about it, when you don't play something, it creates a certain energy. And you take the backbeat and you don't play the backbeat, but you play it in another space, always coming back and knowing where it is, and you flow with it.
That's how the Headhunter. That's how the Headhunter.
That's exactly right.
We play. We never play. So we, instead of playing 2-bar grooves, the whole thing was an improv till the end. But the groove was right there. But it never was. It wasn't. Sometimes it would be like a boomerang that would come around. Sometimes it would never come back around. But the pocket stayed there. But it was pulse. You're right. I could.
It takes a certain. And all of us have done it. It takes a certain kind of concentration to create a pocket and shift it without the pocket really moving.
I've heard you play some very, very fast stuff with one foot, seemingly with your heel down. Now, Sonny Payne and Lenny White, Lenny White can really do this with his heel up, down, doesn't matter. Very fast and for as long as you need him to do it. Sonny Payne could stand up and do it, and he could just really do that. And how did you? Is this something you had to develop, or could you just kind of always sort of do this, or did you put in the time to get this together?
Yeah. I have a theory about that because I have a couple friends, you're the break during rehearsal and the bass player sits down and it's like, what?
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, everything starts from heel down, and that just came from needing to play quiet. So spent a lot of time really, really trying to get that stuff super quiet and always out of the head. I like I have the tension really loose so that I want the beater to fly back as quick as possible, so I want to rely as little on the pedal as I can, and it's just really the throw. It's almost like I like the cheapest pedals possible with the least amount of stuff on there, just so that they're not doing any extra work for you. You know, just let the beater come back so you can get ready to throw it again. And then after all that heel down practicing, you kind of get that muscle like next parallel to your shin going and feeling good. That heats up. And then I realized sometimes just dynamically I would need to reach for heel up. But and this is all in retrospect. I wasn't thinking in this way when I was doing it, but looking back, and it sounds silly, but I think of that as heel down technique with your heel up. You know, so if you just play now heel down, right, and that lift your toe as high as it'll go, you have whatever that distance is to the ground. The hands, where the wrist is a perfect example. So if that's still all we're going to do, but if you lift your heel off the ground, now you have that much more distance to travel. So I'm not lifting from the hip. Nothing's happening from the knee. It's the same thing. I just need to hold my heel up for a little bit. So then I can kind of get that thing going. And sometimes you might have access to that kind of, that thing, which you have no control over. And then the trick is to try to rein it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of heel down with the heel up is a very wordy way of.
That's a great answer.
Well, that's
Thank
a
you.
very good answer. Yeah.
I just raised the front of my bass drum. You know,
so
check this out. No, check it out. If this is your bass drum,
Yep.
and this is the pedal, right? And does this. If you raise the front of the bass drum up, what happens is it tilts the head. So there's a shorter distance.
Interesting.
That's all. Instead of making it flush.
Yeah.
That's what worked for me, you know.
Cool.
I've been thinking about coming up with some kind of electric ankle device. So a motorized, you know, so it would be like a 2-pedal.
Pandemic time. That you had.
Yeah, I guess I've
Just
been
don't
home
play.
too
Don't
much.
play in the rain. Don't play in the rain, man.
No, but then it's good. You can program different presets. So you have like the Art Blakey preset. You have you have
Sonny
the
Payne.
Sonny Payne,
Yeah.
exactly.
Joe Chambers.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're good. We got some good stuff. We'll cut this up.
Hey, Mark, it's great, man.
Man, thank you all of you for, I'm
Thank you.
not quite sure how I ended up in this room, but thank you very much.
You were invited.
Yeah.
You were invited.
Well, that's what I'm not sure about. So, but no, thank you guys. Really. I hope we could I would love to just be in touch and do it again off the record or on the record, whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Sure, man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is beautiful, man. I love this thing.
Thank you so much.
I got it too.
Appreciate
I got it
you
too.
guys. Cool.
All right, brothers.
Okay.
Hey, man.
Hey, guys.
Can I
Thank
take
you.
a picture?
Thank you all.
Can I do a little
Yeah,
screen?
do a screenshot.
Yeah, man.
Screenshot.
All right. 3, 2,
Let me
1.
get my stick people.
Oh,
Yeah, stick people cup.
perfect. Oh yeah, I need one of those. I got to get some
Yeah,
swag.
we want you to get one.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome.
All right,
Awesome.
cool, man.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, guys.
Thank you,
No,
Mark. That
Mark.
was
See you
great.
guys.
Thanks,
I'll
bro.
see you. Have a good
Have a
one.
good mix, Len.